If everything goes according to plan, Terry Francona will be Manager of the Year.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And my name is Jeff. His name is Steve. And we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have been podcasting about this team for a combined 16 seasons. We're glad that you're alongside us here today. Later on in the show, we're going to tell you about a couple of new roster cuts in spring training, some guys sent down to minor league camp. All of them make sense. One of them, the timing is interesting, and the other dude's about to go off in the WBC. In just a few minutes, we'll try to make sense of the Reds lineup that has been going crazy over the last 3 games, scoring 50, literally 50 burger for your Cincinnati Reds in the last 3 games. But we will begin with Terry Francona and the expectations that we have for him in year 2 and why they are sky high. That's on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by MLB The Show 26. Visit MLBTHE.show/LockedOn and use code LOCKEDON to unlock a pack for use in Diamond Dynasty. Pre-order now, available March 17th on PlayStation 5, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Rated E for everyone. Stay tuned later in the episode for our MLB Top 100 highlight. All right, Steve, when it comes to Terry Francona, year 1, he got us to the playoffs. He brought the Reds into the postseason. And as much as that is really the thanks to the Mets crazy collapse, he put them in a great spot. We are hearing great things about the messages that he is delivering in spring training, talking about where the Reds need to have their minds focused on this year. And it's clear that we as fans, it's time. There's no more like, all right, maybe he's going to be an all right manager. And we put some pretty high expectations and hopes on him last year. But I honestly think that the expectation is Manager of the Year. And the reason for that is because if the Reds get where they are going to get, where we want them to be, he will win Manager of the Year because the Reds have not been set up as a division favorite. And if they win the NL Central, I would have a hard time with anyone else getting the argument that they should be Manager of the Year.
Oh, he'll definitely be in the conversation. You know, I think this is a good spot for you and I to kind of stand by the things we've said about Tito already. You know, when we talked about him last year, you're right. We did put a lot of expectations between the hype and just the excitement of the change and all the things. We really hyped up Terry Francona. And I think even though the Mets collapse ultimately got the Reds into the postseason, it was Tito and the way that he was managing through August and September that really kept the Reds relevant and kept them in a position to take advantage of the Mets collapse. You know, I said multiple times last season, and I stand by, I don't think the Reds make the playoffs last year if David Bell is in charge of the team, because he just didn't manage with that kind of urgency that Tito brought, basically managing them like a playoff team. So you carry that over now into this season, and you're right. The expectations have changed. The urgency has changed. We talked about with John Sadak a couple days ago how I feel like everything was different this offseason. The ownership acted differently. The front office acted differently. Tito is talking differently. Everybody is moving into the lane of it is time to win now. This team needs to win now. And yesterday, and the comment section lit us up for this, and I don't know why, but yesterday we talked about how the national perception of Cincinnati is bad and that the talking heads at the national level don't give the Reds the credit they deserve. And we questioned that a little bit. But given that, though, these are the same people that have influence on these awards. And if the 81.5 win over under Cincinnati Reds, win the division, make a playoff run, win a series, advance in the postseason, go to the World Series, how could you not give Terry Francona the Manager of the Year award? Because if the Reds do those things, they have clearly obliterated what the national people that decide these things thought about this team and thought about what they were going to be able to do. The two, I think, have to go hand in hand. If the Reds, how far do they have to go? I'll just say this. If the Reds win a postseason series in 2026, you have to give Terry Francona Manager of the Year. You have to.
Do they include post? No, they don't include postseason. It's just
They
regular
don't.
season.
They don't. But I'm just saying, if the Reds are a division winner, if this team is good enough to win a postseason series, if they're
Well, yeah.
I don't know 10 games over the over under, which this is what we're talking about.
Right.
Terry Francona has to be manager of the year. You can't not give him that award.
And I was thinking about this conversation in context of what we talked about with the Reds not being believed in outside of the city of Cincinnati this season. And I think that there's another angle to this. It's not just, okay, this is how we evaluate this. There could be just this tiniest bit. I'm not saying this is even a majority, but this tiniest bit of setting up a storyline for Terry Francona. Because Terry Francona is already a Hall of Famer. Terry Francona would be like an inner circle Hall of Famer if he ends the playoff drought here in Cincinnati, because he ended the World Series drought in Boston. And he was a fantastic manager for the Guardians, had them one win away from ending their World Series drought, albeit it was in favor of a even longer World Series drought that ended. But I digress. The whole point here is, like, it almost seems as though this narrative has been set up almost like, not like a movie that almost sounds too dramatic, but they're like, look, there are some odds makers and some algorithms that have the Pirates with a better chance of making the playoffs than the Reds. There are some odds makers that have the Reds at like 4 and 5 to 1 to win the division, with the Cubs and the Brewers both favored over them. Nobody is looking at this team as though they should win the division outside the city of Cincinnati. And the way that they talked about Tito was second in manager of the year last year for sneaking on in and being the final team in the playoffs. If they win the division, it is absolutely unquestioned that he will be the manager of the year, because they're not going to give it to Dave Roberts. You don't give it to the guy that manages the best team and everybody knows it. And, oh, by the way, they end up being the best team. And they're not going to give it to, I mean, there's a chance that, and I'm blanking on the guy's name in Atlanta, but there's a chance that he is probably the big challenger here based on their year over year where they didn't make the playoffs, and now they have a chance that they could win their division or whatever, but they got to go through the Phillies and the Mets to do that. So that's probably the biggest challenger in this case, but I still think that the way that folks view the Reds, if Terry Francona leads them to a division championship, they will be so shocked that they will just hand him in the award before the playoffs even begin, even though they don't give that out until the World Series is well over.
Just hand it to him as he's walking into the stadium on the first. Here you go. You win the award.
Tito, you did it.
And it's funny because I talk all the time, Jeff, about how we set our expectation levels with the players and make unreasonable asks. And we did that a little bit with Tito Francona, and yet he's delivering on the things. I think that he's going to continue to adjust the culture in the city of Cincinnati and how this team performs, the things that they do. He's made some clarifying statements this spring of some of his comments. One example of the run, running on the base pass. The question was, well, does that mean we're stopping running? No, we're not going to stop running. I just don't want outs. Don't want outs. Right. Run, do your thing. Don't make outs. And, as the philosophies continue to evolve, as these players get more and more comfortable with who they are as big leaguers, what the expectations of them are from their manager, and then being able to deliver on them, all of these things start to grow together. And it's this very symbiotic relationship between players that are competing, Sal Stewart competing for Rookie of the Year, Elly De La Cruz, is he going to compete for an MVP? Do we have a starting pitcher that's going to compete for a Cy Young? As these individual performances start to stack up and these players start to do these things, it's a reflection back on what Terry Francona is creating in that clubhouse and what Terry Francona is creating from an expectation standpoint. And it's nice to finally be in a place where there is a manager that can set that kind of tone, that can set those kind of expectations, because they have not had that around here in a long time. And you can go back and look at, several managers back now, maybe back to Dusty, before you get to a manager that could clearly set a tone and an expectation. Now, whether you agreed with the tone and expectation or not, that's a different story. That's another show. But I think you go back to that to find the last example of a manager that had this kind of impact.
Did not think we'd be throwing Jim Riggleman under the bus in today's episode, but here we are.
Hey, bunt always, always bunt. That's the philosophy.
And Terry Francona's philosophy should be always win the NL Central.
Love that for us. All right, listen up, Jeff. We got a lot more to talk about because these Cincinnati Reds, oh my God, 50 runs. By the way, you said you counted them like you had to take off your shoes and socks. And anyway, 50 runs a game. That's a lot of runs in a game. What does it mean? We're going to tell you. That's next.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position that you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location, and all of the above, so that you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. You're really taking aim at the right person. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of today's podcast will get $75 in sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status that it deserves over at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on today's show. Indeed.com/PODCAST. In terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want. Rivalry games, ranked matchups. You can even look at mid-major games, which I love a good mid-major matchup. And you can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. You can even check out different odds. I mean, you got the Bearcats finishing up the regular season. The Miami Redhawks are looking to finish their regular season undefeated on the road against Ohio. All of that is over on FanDuel. Go safe, go bold, or ride with the team that you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game.
Thanks for making Locked On Reds your first listen each and every day. And thanks for helping us to be the #1 sports podcasting network in all the land. We appreciate you very much. You already live your team every single day. Take it up a level. Join the Everydayer Club over on the audio feeds. That is where you're going to get ad-free Locked On Reds. No interruptions from the show, just all Reds talk all the time. $5 a month, $50 a year. It's also going to get you access to an exclusive Discord server where not only can you talk Reds baseball with Jeff and I on the Discord channel, but every single show on the entire network has its own channel. You can talk ball all the time with all the experts of the Locked On Network. The link for that is down in the show description. Go check out the Everydayer Club today. All right, Jeff Carr, 50 runs in 3 games. I don't know what kind of math you did, but I did some quick math. That's 16.6 runs per game. Bold prediction, hot take time. If the Reds score 16 runs a game, they're going to win the World Series.
Yeah, buddy. No, I'm with you on that one. And I think that this is intriguing because I've seen a lot of folks be like, okay, I know this is spring training. I know this is, but that's a lot of runs. Like that we're good. The lineup's good. And I would say, let's have some fun with this. But I do want to temper the expectations a little bit. Don't expect this lineup that we have said and we have begged to average somewhere around 5 runs a game to all of a sudden start averaging 16 runs a game. Because as fun as that would be, well, it'd be impossible. Not impossible, but it would be the first team ever to do that, I think. I haven't looked at the history of baseball, but I'm pretty sure nobody's averaged that many runs in a 162 game season. But when it comes to the performances that we have seen, always remember they're facing different pitchers, especially when it comes to the Dodgers yesterday. The Dodgers, they didn't run out their A squad. You could probably argue they didn't run out their B squad because Steve Santiago Espinal was their first baseman. and he did hit a couple of home runs.
I want to answer this thing real quick, just so you know. 1930, the New York Yankees hold the highest average runs per game in MLB history in the modern era. 6.9 runs per game.
That's nice. But when it comes to we're off the rails. But like looking at the success that this lineup is having right now, I think that we should be excited to see how the Reds are moving, but understand that there's definitely a grain of salt that we've got to take it with. I am all here for Elly De La Cruz hitting it over the batter's eye and out of Goodyear Ballpark completely and doing the gritty around third base and coming home. I love all of that. But for me to expect that every single time out, he did it against Cole Irvin, a guy who has not pitched in the major leagues in a year. He pitched in Korea last year. And so he's trying to get back into the major leagues and stuff like that. He's doing that with the Dodgers right now. I don't know that he makes their opening day roster. And I think that we've got to remember those sorts of things when it comes to these types of performances. But it's at least very good to see. I mean, Steve, we talk about Baseball Savant and the red and the blue, and you want to see more red than blue. If you look at the exit velocities from yesterday, and this is for both the Reds and the Dodgers, there was a lot of red off the bat yesterday. And honestly, that's how it's been for the last couple of days. But I don't necessarily think that we are learning anything new about this lineup to the point that we need to change our expectation.
You know, it's hard, right? Because we keep saying, you know, it's spring. The stats don't mean anything. Don't do that thing where you look at the stats and think that, you know, go back to Amir Garrett as an example. That spring that he struck out everybody, like he didn't allow. And then we saw how that turned out. It happens. But you can be excited about the results without overvaluing the stats. Here's what I mean. So Matt McLain, again, he was 3 for 3 in that game against the Dodgers yesterday. You know, does that mean Matt McLain's going to go out and hit, 500 on the season? No. But I'll tell you this. You watch Matt McLain's at bats. You look how comfortable he is. You look how locked in he is. You look at him protecting the low and away and not being a victim to that pitch. And you start to gain confidence in the at-bats that he's putting together. Not necessarily looking at his batting average or his on-base percentage or his slugging, but look at his comfort level. You get to use the eye test again when you're talking about spring training. And this is the time you can do that. This is the time you can use your gut and the eye test and get a good feel about where a guy's at. And right now, these hitters that the Reds need to rely on all look comfortable. They all look locked in. They all look ready to go, and they all look healthy. And those are the eye tests we're talking about right now. Those are the things to be excited about. Never mind the stats. Just enjoy the 470-foot home runs from Elly De La Cruz and never mind who it came off of. Just be happy that he's having great at-bats. And that's where I am right now, Jeff. I'm happy at these great at-bats these guys are putting together. And the pitching is going to get there, and we'll get excited about the pitching before spring training's over. But right now is a time to be excited about how these hitters are putting it together and seeing the ball.
And that's actually a key, because the converse side of getting excited about spring training stats, if you're excited about the lineup, then I ask you how you feel about Emilio Pagan and Tony Santillan yesterday. Emilio Pagan gave up 3 home runs. Tony Santillan didn't. I think Tony Santillan just gave up the 1 home run, but they were all home runs. They were hard hit balls and things like that. So if you really start to like twist your brain around spring training stats, you're going to eventually twist it to where it hurts. So don't do that, because this is the other part of this too, is that early on in spring training, like we still are, most pitchers have not found their groove. They have not found their stuff yet. Hitters are always ahead of the pitchers when it comes to spring training. Spring training is for the pitchers, not for the hitters. We've talked about this a couple of different times now. So when you look at the results, you want the hitters to go. And I think that a hitter who is struggling is much more worth paying attention to some different things than a hitter that's just absolutely going crazy right now. But at the same time, like,
I mean, look at the philosophy. Look at the philosophy of the approach in spring training, hitter versus pitcher. Hitters are going up there trying to have good at bats, get their timing down, get their swing down, do the things that they're going to do repeatable all the time, right? Pitchers are out there working on new things. They're trying out pitches. They're trying to improve, where their arm slot is going to land. They're constantly tweaking in spring training, the things that they're doing. So when you look at those two philosophies, it's two different mindsets. And then let's talk about the results in the pitchers. And the two examples you gave in Santillan and Pagan. These are two pitchers coming off of years where they had a record number of appearances and innings and worked a ton. The Reds are bringing them along slowly. They delayed them just a little bit before they got them into games. And these are also pitchers that are working on things. These are guys that are trying to spin it up. So what's the eye test look for in a pitcher? The eye test and for pitchers in spring training is, how do they feel the next day? Do we hear that they're hurt? Do we hear that they're sore? Do we hear that they need to be delayed or miss a turn or slow things down? And if we're not hearing those things, then spring training is going according to plan for those pitchers. And when we get to opening day in Cincinnati, now is the time you start actually worrying about the results and what these pitchers are doing when they come out. Because right up until that last day before opening day, the pitchers are working and tweaking and changing and trying to get things ready. And that just looks different. And boy, can we overvalue what the spring stats look like. And boy, can we 100%. Overdo what that means. But in this case, I think everything right now is moving along just as it should. And my eyes are telling me that this team is getting dialed in.
Because you've got to understand how to evaluate things in spring training. Otherwise, you will look at Rhys Hines' 500 batting average and 1.821 OPS and think that he deserves to be on the opening day roster. Yeah. And look, I still think that there's more for Rhys Hines to show. He's more than meets the eye at this point in his career. But at the same time, I don't think he's pushing anybody off this opening day outfield as of right now. So just understanding what everything means, it's good. It's fun. Don't go too crazy. But with that being said, there were some cuts that were made. And one of them is a very interestingly timed cut based on something that happened in yesterday's game against the Dodgers. We'll talk about who's heading down to the minor leagues coming up next. This week's Locked On MLB Top 100 highlight is brought to you by MLB The Show 26, the latest from the beloved video game franchise. Each week, we're going to highlight the stars in our Locked On MLB's top 100 players list, the elite names that you'll be controlling, building around, and going head-to-head with in MLB The Show. Today, we're spotlighting Elly De La Cruz, coming in at number 30 on the Locked On MLB Top 100. Look, he might be a little bit low to some. He might be correctly rated to some. Just based on how you look at last year, I kind of think it makes sense, but he's going to be a lot higher next season. We're already seeing it. In spring training, he's going crazy. Everything's an extra base hit. That's this week's MLB Top 100 highlight presented by MLB The Show 26, where you can play, manage, and build with your favorite players and teams. If you love talking baseball, you'll love playing it even more. Visit MLBtheshow.com/lockedon and use the code LOCKEDON to unlock a pass for use in Diamond Dynasty. Internet connection is required. Pre-order now. Available March 17th on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, and Nintendo Switch. Rated E for everyone. If you can't watch us on YouTube, you can always listen to us on your favorite podcast app. We're on all of them out there. And that's also where the ad-free feed lives. Check out the Locked On Reds Everydayer Club and go ad-free today. All right, Steve, the Reds did make some cuts out of the major league roster heading down to the minor leagues. And the first guy that I want to focus on is a guy we've talked about just a little bit in the lead up here for spring training and things like that. And Hector Rodriguez. Hector Rodriguez was officially sent down to Louisville. And I'm not surprised by this. I didn't think he was going to make the opening day roster, but I find the timing intriguing. Because in yesterday's game, in case you missed it, he hit a pop-up that was in foul territory to begin with. But because of the wind, and as Cowboy said on the broadcast, literally, if you just put the ball in the air, you pretty much got a chance to hit a home run today because of how windy it is here. Because of the wind, it was blown from foul territory to fair territory. And none of the Dodgers fielders had a beat on this fly ball. And so the ball hits the ground. Where's Hector Rodriguez? In the batter's box. He did that thing that you're taught like when you're 5. He didn't do the thing that you were like taught when you're 5. When you hit the ball, you run. And then the umpire will tell you, you got to come back and swing again. And if he'd have run, he'd have got a hit. And while the result, like we say, is not that important, this kind of feeds into what we've seen from Hector Rodriguez this spring. And so I think that it's key that he's going down to AAA. He's clearly got some stuff to work on.
Have you been disappointed in him overall? Because I have. This was a season where
everybody else is going, yeah.
Right. He was supposed to be able to start to begin to play his way into an opportunity. And everything, I mean, we're limited on what we've seen of him based on the fact that in 2026 we can't show games on TV apparently from Goodyear. But the performances of his that I have seen, I've been a little disappointed. He doesn't look comfortable in the outfield. His routes have been bad. The defense has not been good. He's done things like you just pointed out, where if you're a guy that's trying to break out, if you're a guy that's trying to get noticed, you run every time you make contact. You try and make something happen. You're trying to create opportunities. You're not standing there like you're a 10-year veteran of the sport. And I think Hector Rodriguez is dropped the ball a little bit, pun intended.
It's disjointed.
He could have made an impression, and he hasn't.
Yeah, disjointed is the word that I would use, because that was something I remember. It wasn't a televised game, but it was a radio broadcasted game where it was either 2 out of 3 or 2 straight at bats. Guys hit a fly ball to him in the outfield. And in both cases, it was Tommy Thrall on the call, and he was just like, oh, that's a bad route. Or Hector Rodriguez took a bad route to that ball and just didn't get to it, or something like that. And I know there will be folks who really study the Reds minor leagues that are like, well, he was an infielder, moved to the outfield, so he's still learning. Fine, but he did not prove to me that he deserves to be on the major league roster right now. He's got some more work to do. And I think that we're talking about him as one of the few guys this year that could break into the major leagues. And we had mentioned during the offseason that opportunity abounds in the outfield. So if you're going to break into the major leagues in the Reds and you're an outfielder, you got a good shot. But if you're going to have these types of very uneven performances, that shot's going to come in September or not at all. So he's got some work to do to bump that up. The other guys that were sent down, a name that people may or may not know because he was a very late ad as far as a minor league signing. He's a right-handed pitcher named Darren McCoggan. Also, right-handed pitcher Julian Aguiar was sent down, and Jose Franco were sent down to AAA Louisville. Both guys are on the depth chart as far as starting pitchers go, but we had said that the 5th starter spot is really up to Burns, Lauder, and Williamson. And with Hunter Green missing some time, you just move those up and you say, okay, well, Brandon Williamson's fighting to prove that he deserves one of those spots. I didn't think that would open a door for Julian Aguiar to win a spot in the starting rotation. So he's going down to Louisville. And then the other guy that's being sent down, he's being sent down. The announcement specifically says he's being optioned to Double-A Chattanooga, Leo Balcazar. So those are all the guys. I think all of those guys are on the 40-man. No, Darren McCoggan is not. But everybody else is on the 40-man roster, but they will be in the minors now, and there are now 45 players remaining in Major League Camp.
Yeah, no surprises. And them being optioned is not for the most part, not a negative thing. I mean, this is just an expected move. You bring the extra people. As we get closer, you start whittling it down, because as we get closer, the everyday guys are going to start getting more time, getting more work, getting more reps. So makes total sense. That doesn't mean we won't see these guys just because they're sent to minor league camp. They're still going to be in the spring training games. We'll still see them. We're still going to hear from them. They're still going to continue to grow and develop. So, good on these guys for continuing to try and get some opportunities and do some things. Bummed about Hector Rodriguez. Hopefully he steps it up a bit as spring training continues to move on. The starting pitchers, this is going to be fun to watch how all this plays out over the next couple of weeks, Jeff, because, still the 3 guys we thought would be in the mix are in the mix in Lauder, Burns, and Williamson. I'm really interested to see where this all lands and who has what role heading into opening day. We wait to hear next week about Hunter Green and get a clearer picture of what kind of timeline are we talking about. And that's going to have a huge impact, I think, on specifically Brandon Williamson. Lauder and Burns were always battling for that spot, and the odd man out I know there's been some speculation about Burns in the bullpen. I have just never seen it. The odd man out was certain was going to be the first guy in the rotation down in Louisville. But Brandon Williamson, he's got a real opportunity here to get into that starting rotation and at least get an extended look, right? Get an extended opportunity to find a lane for himself. So I'm interested to see how he performs over the next couple of weeks.
And one other note on these guys that were sent down, Edwin Arroyo being sent down to minor league camp. That just means whenever he returns from the World Baseball Classic, he will be working out with the Triple A's. I am looking forward to him in the World Baseball Classic, and I want to dive into that a little bit more. I got a extra show coming out after Puerto Rico's game is over today. They believe they started playing at 11. So by the time I get that show out, it should be about the end of it. But Ed Arroyo's got a very unique opportunity to showcase himself in a way that he would not have if he was just going to be in Reds camp. And the Reds are a little bit unique in that their stars, I think, definitely deserve recognition and deserve opportunities on World Baseball Classic rosters, but none of them are going. And so the Reds are going to retain their top players during spring training. They're all working out together. We saw the weirdness of that yesterday with the Dodgers because, quite frankly, all of the Dodgers deserve to be on somebody's World Baseball Classic team. And so that's why we were seeing whoever the Dodgers AAA team is going, whatever their name is, I forget who they are. But we saw the Dodgers AAA team yesterday, and I think we'll see that moving forward with a couple of different teams.
Albuquerque?
Is it Albuquerque? I couldn't remember. I went to say Reno, and I'm like, no, that's Vegas. That's the A's. Anyway, I can't remember, but that's going to be the interesting part with all of this is how does Edwin Arroyo take advantage of this opportunity in the World Baseball Classic? We saw a former friend of the team, Stewart Fairchild, was like this close to hitting a home run against Japan earlier on Friday morning, but it was called foul. It was not a foul.
How you've done this entire show post Reds Dodgers and not lamented the loss of Santiago Espinal is beyond me. And that is where we are going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks as always for making Locked On Reds your first listen each and every day. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you listening. We're going to be back in your feeds all spring training, all season long, keeping you informed. If you're in the audios, make your second listen Locked On MLB. Sully's got you covered over there with a great national perspective on Major League Baseball. If you're on the video, stick around. We're going to redirect you over to Locked On's first ever 24/7 national YouTube channel where all of the experts of the Locked On Network are talking ball 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to keep you getting your sports fixed. We're going to be back in your feeds on Monday. Jeff's going to be back in your feed here in just a few minutes, probably with a special edition Santiago Espinal show, but I think probably it's more likely going to be about Arroyo. We're going to keep gathering up the news, the notes, the rumors, and the reports to keep you locked on Reds every single day.
Did Tito walk into Nick Krall's office after yesterday's game and just chew him out for letting Santiago Espinal go? See, I told you, Nick. And then Nick Krall responded with, those are 2 more home runs than he hit all of last year.
There's people upset, buddy. There's people upset.